Have you ever heard the words theology and theosophy? They sound so similar, you'd think they were basically the same thing. But nope, they represent two completely different maps for understanding the divine. So today, we're going to untangle them.
So you've got theology and you've got theosophy. One is, a cornerstone of major world religions. The other? It's a mystical movement that popped up in the 19th century. So what is the real difference? Well, to figure that out, we got to go back to where they both started. Okay, let's dive in.
Everything, and I mean everything, kicks off with this one single ancient Greek word, theos. It's simple. It just means God or a deity. But from this one little seed, two totally different trees of thought started to grow. Let's trace the first branch.
All right, first up is the path that most of us have probably heard of at some point, theology.
So, theology takes our root word theos and mashes it up with another Greek word, logos, which means word or reason or even study. You can literally translate it to the study of God or words about God. It's all about using systematic reason, logic, to try and understand God's nature, usually inside the walls of a specific faith.
And believe me, this process gets incredibly specific. Take Christian theology, for example. The whole goal is to define God through this really clear set of attributes that you'd find in Scripture, being all-powerful, holy, eternal, the whole shebang. It's really an attempt to build a logical framework for something that's, transcendent.
But then, fast forward to the 19th century, this was an era of huge scientific discoveries, but also a lot of spiritual questioning. And that same root word, theos, sprouted something completely different. This new path wasn't about a single text, it was a search for some kind of hidden universal wisdom. And that was theosophy.
Theosophy also starts with theos, of course, but it pairs it with Sophia, which is the Greek word for wisdom. So, instead of words about God, theosophy presents itself as divine wisdom. It was pitched as a modern movement that was actually reviving an ancient universal truth that supposedly sits at the heart of all the world's religions.
It all kicked off in New York City back in 1875, and let me tell you, the movement had a pretty wild and often dramatic early history. It wasn't long before they moved their headquarters all the way to India, which really shows you how much it was influenced by Eastern religions. But after its main founder, Helena Blavatsky, died, things got messy. The whole society was shaken by arguments over who should take over, and it led to these major splits.
Now, the core beliefs of theosophy are just a fascinating mix of ideas. It's like a spiritual melting pot. It brings together concepts like a secret doctrine that only a special few know about, guidance from these hidden spiritual masters, reincarnation, karma, and even this incredibly complex cosmic history involving lost continents like Atlantis and Lemuria. It's a lot to take in. Okay, so let's do this. Let's put these two worldviews right next to each other, head to head. Because when you see them side by side like this, the divide between them becomes crystal clear.
So here's the breakdown. On one side, you have theology, which, in the Christian tradition, is this ancient study based on one sacred text, seeing God as a personal being. On the other side, you have theosophy, a modern movement that claims its wisdom comes from hidden masters, and it sees the divine as this impersonal, absolute force. I mean, from where they started to what their ultimate goals are, they really are fundamentally different.
But this whole search for theos, this deep human drive to know the divine, it's not new at all. In fact, it kind of echoes this really fascinating mystery from the ancient world.
Just try to picture ancient Athens for a second, a city just packed with these magnificent temples to Zeus, Athena, all the big names. But among all those incredible monuments, there was this one simple altar dedicated to an unknown god. Think about that. It was this profound admission, right? A recognition that for all their gods and all their knowledge, there might be something more, something they hadn't quite figured out yet.
And that little altar, it actually became a bridge. When the Apostle Paul was speaking to the Athenians, he pointed right to it. He said, "That unknown God you're worshiping, that's the very one I'm here to tell you about." And that moment just perfectly captures this timeless human quest to define and understand the divine. It's the exact same quest that drives both theology and theosophy, even if they end up on totally different roads.
So, after all that, why does untangling these two words even matter? Why should we care about the difference?
Well, because it shows us how ideas are built. From one single root, theos, we get two completely different operating systems for reality. One is a system of faith-based logic, building its entire case from a single foundational text.
The other is what's called a syncretic system. It blends mysticism, Eastern religion, and all sorts of esoteric beliefs. Understanding that difference helps us navigate and honestly just appreciate how complex human belief can be.
And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating final thought. If one tiny word, theos, can contain two completely different worlds, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other simple words do we use every single day that hold entire universes of meaning, just waiting for us to unpack them?